close your eyes. Imagine that you live in a world with no chocolate. No M&Ms, no Snickers, no chocolate Easter bunnies, no hot fudge sauce for your ice cream sundaes. Okay, open your eyes. It's not true. Aren't you glad?
Yes.
Okay, so chocolate is a huge industry, and annually worldwide they sell about $75 billion worth of chocolate every year. So according to history.com, that's where I got that source from. Okay, so Americans on a monthly average eat about a half a pound of chocolate every month. I think I probably eat more than that. Europeans, in comparison to that, eat 2 pounds of chocolate a month, almost 2 pounds a month. It's 22 pounds a year. So huge difference between Americans and Europeans. But let's see, so you know you eat chocolate, you know what it tastes like, you know all the delicious treats that you can make with it, but do you know the origin of it? Do you know where it came from, or how it's made, or how long it's been around? Okay, so we're gonna learn that. Let me tell you this. First of all, let's click our little button here. I don't wanna imagine a world without chocolate. Okay, so a little history on where chocolate comes from. So chocolate starts out as cacao, from a cacao tree is what they call it. And this is a cacao pod, and inside of that cacao pod there are these cacao beans. We don't call it cocoa until heat is added to it, and then once the heat is added to it and it's processed, then we can call it cocoa. And that's probably what you're more familiar with, is the word cocoa. So it starts out as this pod. Takes about 5 or 6 months for this to grow on the tree, and then once it's done growing and they harvest it, you can get these beans out of it. And let's see, you get a lot of beans out of that. It has to take time to be fermented, and then it has to be dried, and then it can be packaged up and sent off to be processed and manufactured to make the delicious treats that you all eat today. Okay, so we get about 30 to 45 beans in that pod there. Let's see, so now that you know what chocolate is, how it grows, it also grows near the equator, just something to know. It originally was found in Mexico and Central America, and it grows generally in countries that's real close to the equator. So now that you know where it comes from, the tree that it comes from, and a little bit about how it started, let's look at the history of it. Okay. So, in Diane Peterson's article, Chocolate Sweet History, we can trace the origins of the cacao tree and chocolate back to about 600 BC, when they found the cocoa residue in like earthen jugs that they found in Mexico and Central America. And so that was the first history that they found of that. So it was used at that time, and it was mixed with liquid to make a bitter drink. And so it wasn't like what we have today. It wasn't delicious and tasty and full of sugar, but it was a bitter drink, and they used it for medicinal purposes, and they used it for in sacred ceremonies, and then they also thought that it was an aphrodisiac. So Montezuma apparently drank 3 gallons of it a day, thinking that it would help him in that area. So they also used it for currency. So 100 beans would be worth 1 turkey hen. And so you can think about that today. Let's see, get to the next page there. So there is the origins of that. Yeah, can y'all see that? All right, so then in about the 1500s, Columbus and Cortez found it, and then they decided to grow some more of it and take it back to Spain. So once they did, they added sugar and honey to it to make it sweeter, so that gives it a little bit more of the taste of what we know today. So they would still drink it in a drink. It was still kind of for the elite. It wasn't for everyone everywhere. It was a little bit expensive, so they just used it for special occasions and different people that actually had money to use that. So they did that first. Now that we know it was a bitter drink is how it started, then they added sweetener, then they were able to add some more manufacturing, and we get to a more modern time, and chocolate shops started to appear, and it started to grow in popularity, and it was becoming more and more accessible to people around that part of the world. And so they found new ways to process it. They did a couple different things. One of them was the cocoa press. And what they would do is they would grind the cocoa beans down, and they would squeeze all of the fat out, and then they would be left with like a dry powder that they could mix other ingredients into, and then they would be able to use that to make candy that is more similar to what we would eat today. The other thing that they did was this thing called conching, and they called it that because the paddles that they used in order to process the cocoa beans look like conch shells. So they would be able to pulverize it into a very fine paste and be able to use that, again, as something a little bit more similar to what we would know and use today. The Europeans thought that they were very fashionable if they drank this liquid chocolate mixture, and then they thought it had medicinal purposes as well as nutritional purposes, and also as an aphrodisiac as well. So that was some of the history of chocolate. Okay, so to recap, let's see here. Chocolate has a really long history, like 2,000 years or so. It's passed through many different cultures. It's had lots of different processes applied to it. It started out as a bitter drink, and now, of course, today we have delicious treats that you all know and love, I'm sure. So it started out for the wealthy. Now we all eat it, probably at least once a week, I would say. So now it's shared and enjoyed and loved by everyone. So before you, or the next time that you put hot fudge on your ice cream, or you get a midday treat, or you dip your strawberries in chocolate, or you buy a chocolate Easter bunny this week for Easter, just remember that you're eating a delicious little treat and a little piece of history.